All right, I think we're recording. So hi everybody. I'm Jennifer May. So thanks for coming tonight. I really appreciate Middle Country Public Library for inviting me back. I was here a few months ago doing a different talk, and I'm looking forward to our talk again tonight. I was trying to think of a topic that would be good for us and for this time of the year. And, Valentine's Day is coming up, and there's a lot of talk about relationships and love and so forth. And sometimes, one of the hardest things to do is to love ourselves, right? We always talk about loving another person, but occasionally, we kind of neglect ourselves. So I wanted to put together something that kind of teaches us how to do that a little bit better, have a better relationship with ourselves. Okay. So I call this one the ultimate self-care package. Now, I already have a video of this title on my YouTube channel, but I combined it with even more information. So it's even more than that if you've ever seen that one. Okay, so I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint. So I'll be a little screen on the side, and then the PowerPoint will be there for you to watch as we talk. Okay, so I'm just going to share the screen. Oh, whoops, hit the wrong thing. Sorry, guys. Who can share? Only host, all panelists. It's a little different from what I'm used to here. Who can start sharing? Sarah, I don't know what happened here.
You should be able to share it now. On the bottom, it should say share screen.
Yeah, but another window popped up that says who can share, only host, all panelists. And then it won't let me do anything after that. Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, guys. Technical difficulties. All right. I think it should be coming up. You see it now? You see
Yes.
my? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Someone raised the hand. Anyone have a question to start? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time.
That's okay. I think that was an accident, so.
Oh, okay. All right, no problem. But, feel free if you have a question along the way, I'll be happy to try to answer it for you. Okay. I want to feel like everybody's on board with me and understanding the material and that it's meaningful and relevant to you. So anyway, I call this one the ultimate self-care package. Because if you think about it, a care package, like if you were away at camp, right, and your parents sent you a care package, it would be a bunch of like little goodies in there. There probably would be some snacks and, maybe a writing pad or a notebook or a diary or different things all mixed together. So this is a little bit like that. So I kind of drew from different places to come up with different tips and tricks and skills to help us develop a better relationship with ourselves. Okay. But first, we're going to pose a question to everybody, and you could answer it or not. Okay. So the question is, who is it easier to love or care for, right? Ourself or other people, right? It's a tricky question. And some of the people that I've asked in the past have said, sometimes it's easier to love someone else, right? I don't really like myself, but I love so-and-so, right? So it could be a challenge sometimes. And there are some things that get in the way. And I'm going to go over some of the reasons why sometimes we don't take care of ourselves. And then after that, we'll end on a high note, and I'm going to give you a bunch of ways we could get better at caring for ourselves. Okay? So, I'm sorry, Sarah, I have a hard time letting the top screen disappear. There's like a menu at the top that's sort of not minimized. You know how to minimize that?
I don't think we see it, so.
Yeah, it's hard for me to read the titles of my slides, but anyway.
Is it under view options and then exit full screen, or?
All right, don't worry. I'll try to deal with it. All right.
Okay.
All right. So here's some reasons why sometimes we don't take good care of ourselves. Okay. So on a minor level, things come up in life, right? There's realistic things that we have to do, right? So if you have a family and you're taking care of your family, sometimes, you have to spend a lot of energy on everybody else, right? Especially if you have kids or there's someone who's ill and needs a lot of attention, right? Or other times things just get very busy with holidays, with work, with COVID, right? And we don't always make the time for ourselves, and sometimes it's very difficult to do so. So that's a common reason, right, why we may not do that. Other times, it gets a little more complicated. Like people are so used to us helping them that if we start to make a decision where we're doing something for ourselves, other people don't always like it, right? So sometimes if you're not helping them and you say no to them, to their request, because you're doing something that's right for you, you may get a little pushback from people. So we're kind of concerned sometimes about other people's reactions, right? So sometimes that holds us back and we're just very concerned about pleasing them. And then we put ourselves last, right? Okay. Other times, going a little deeper, okay, because I'm a psychologist, right? We got to dig a little more. When we were growing up, we may not have been in a family where our parents were able to give us the kind of love, care, or attention that we really needed. They might have done the best they could, given who they were and how they were raised and what they knew and the time that they had, but it may not have felt like enough to us. Other times, they may have been frankly abusive or neglectful to us. And so those experiences may have not prepared ourselves to learn how to take care of ourselves in a positive way, right? And if we weren't shown love, we may not know how to love ourselves or what that even means, right? So we can't blame ourselves for that because we just maybe have never learned how to do it, okay? And sometimes springboarding from that, we might have this feeling that we don't deserve to be cared for or loved, right? That there's something fundamentally wrong with us or unlovable about us. And so we don't feel like we should even do it. Okay. That's a little bit more deep and painful, but it does happen, right? Sometimes we can relate to that feeling. And other times, possibly from some of the pushback I was talking about in that upper right-hand picture, we might believe that being kind to ourselves is like kind of selfish or narcissistic, right? If I'm loving myself, maybe I'm a narcissist and I don't want to be a narcissist. I don't want to be, me all the time, right? But just to dispel the myth, that's not what I'm trying to teach us how to do today, okay? It's different to be, selfish and self-serving and to neglect other people's needs in favor of our own or to exploit other people in the service of ourselves. And that's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to balance our life so that we're not forgotten, okay? Or so that we're treated kindly, okay? So just to put that aside. Okay, so another thing to keep in mind is that a lack of adequate self-care kind of falls on a spectrum. It's not a black or white thing, right? So like sometimes, we might get too busy, we might mildly neglect our needs, and we have to do this temporarily. And other times we might really be hard on ourselves on a regular basis. All right, let me just move this so you can see it. Okay, we might actually like betray ourselves and act as like our own worst enemy, just in terms of the way we treat ourselves. Okay, and I'm going to give some examples in the slides to come. So just to define a few things, because sometimes I find it's helpful just to like get the vocabulary clear, right? So if you look up the word neglect, it means to fail to care for properly. So if we're talking about self-neglect, we're not taking care of ourselves properly in a variety of ways. It could be physical ways, emotional ways, relationship ways, and we're not doing right by ourselves, right? So a fail to care for ourselves properly. And betray, right? If you talk about betraying someone's trust, right? It's about doing something bad and hurtful to someone that causes a loss of respect. So if we betray ourselves and betray our trust in ourselves, we're also doing something bad and hurtful toward ourselves that causes us to not respect ourselves. Okay. So I'm going to interchangeably use words such as betray and neglect because sometimes we do this, right? And we really treat ourselves worse than we would treat another person. Okay. And that's when things get tricky. And it's important for us to develop an awareness of when we're doing these things and start to ask ourselves, what's this all about? Where did this come from? And maybe it was adaptive in the past for some reason, but maybe it's no longer adaptive and I need to do something differently. It might just be a habit I picked up from childhood that I just keep doing, right? Making myself small might have worked for me back then, but maybe right now it's not good, okay? So we just have to be aware of our tendencies for things like that. Okay, so here's some examples, okay, of ways that we might betray ourselves by either not tuning in to ourselves or tuning in and then ignoring our needs. Okay, so let's look at the picture on the left, right? So this is the famous see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Okay, so we're blocking out our view of our inner selves and what we actually need. Okay, so number one, we may not follow our intuition or our gut instincts. So we might have a feeling, for example, like, is something not right about this deal that this guy's offering me? He's pressuring me. He's making me feel like I can't say no. He's trying to swindle me into something. I don't know if this is a good idea, but I go along with it anyway. And I went against my gut instinct and then I regretted it. Okay. And sometimes we do that. And then we think, God, why did I do that for? I should have listened to myself. Right. Other times we don't listen to our emotions. Right. Sometimes emotions seem like they're just a pain in the neck. They just torture me. They make me uncomfortable. They make me feel bad. But sometimes they're really telling us something about a situation. Right. If you go to an amusement park and you feel really good and happy and excited, you'll probably go back again because your emotions are telling you this was a good idea. Or if you feel really uncomfortable about someone and it's telling you, geez, I'm a little afraid, I'm a little disturbed by this person, that's important information. Maybe even if you don't know exactly why yet, there's a reason why you felt that way. So it's important for us to check in with how we're feeling, because instead of logicking our way out of it all the time, because sometimes it is important to figure out what's going on within us, right? Okay. Even deeper than emotions are needs, which are sometimes hard to name, quite honestly. I think I'm a little bit better even with myself about naming my emotions and figuring out what do I actually need right now. And a lot of times we don't honor what we really need. And sometimes it's basic needs like air, food, water, shelter, all that kind of stuff, clothing. But other times it's a need for belonging, and it's a need for companionship. It's a need for self-esteem. There's other kinds of needs that we have as human beings. And sometimes the emotions we have or the distress we're in is because we're not honoring our needs. So we got to check in with ourselves once in a while. Like, what do I actually need right now? And how could I meet that need in a healthy rather than an unhealthy way? Okay. So I might have a need for belonging, but I could join a street gang. Okay. And that might serve it to some degree, but it's not a healthy way of satisfying my need for belonging. Right. How do I feel a sense of belonging with healthy people that are going to respect me? Right. Things like that are really important for us. Another thing of how we betray ourselves is not living from and making choices by our values. Okay. And sometimes we don't even bother to ask ourselves, what's really important to me? What do I actually value that should be driving my wise mind decisions? Right. So am I valuing honesty, but then telling lies about things and sneaking around? Or am I saying loyalty is important to me, but a friend tells me a secret and I can't wait to turn around and tell a different friend? Right. So am I betraying myself and my own sense of goodness by going against the things that I value? Right. So very important for us to keep that in mind and define what our values even are. Okay, next, a more extreme form of that, which really stems from this, is betraying ourselves with different forms of what I'll call self-abuse. All right, it sounds a little extreme, and to a degree it is, but if you think about abuse, it comes in different forms, right? There's verbal abuse, there's emotional abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's physical abuse, right? Sometimes, we're our own worst enemy because of the way we talk to ourselves in our head, right? We might say, there's certain parts of myself that I can't stand. I can't stand when I'm needy. I can't stand when I'm vulnerable. I can't stand when I feel like I'm a show off or arrogant. And I can't stand when I'm angry. And so every time I get in those modes, I start talking negative to myself. What's the matter with you? Why did you do that again? You're so stupid. You should be better than that, right? All that kind of stuff. It's like an ongoing negative dialogue with this inner critic. And we probably might say things to ourselves that we wouldn't dare to say to somebody else, but we're totally fine with saying it to ourselves. And it could be that it's related to other messages we got earlier on in our life, or it could have developed for other reasons. But sometimes it's so habitual We don't even realize we're doing it. But it's important for us to step back and be mindful of that and recognize, like, why am I saying this to myself? Where did this come from? What purpose is this serving? Am I trying to protect myself from harm in some way? Or is this the best way to do that, accomplish that? Is there a better way to accomplish that? And the answer is yes, and I'm going to tell you some ways how, but sometimes it stems from a good intention, like we're trying to help ourselves to be better, but it comes out in a super harsh way. Okay? But it's not really going to help us. It's actually just going to bring us down. It's going to create more shame and more paralysis in terms of moving forward in our life. Okay? So, and like a lot of these things are related, perfectionism, right? So perfectionism stems from this feeling that I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. And no matter what I do, it never feels like enough. Perfectionism is like, a gerbil on a wheel. You keep trying to get to this ideal of perfection that just doesn't exist. And you're spinning your wheels trying to get there. And you're always suffering because you're always feeling like you're missing the mark. It's different from excellence, right? Excellence is doing your best and accepting the best that you're able to do right now, given these circumstances, right? And that helps us strive to be better in our life. But when we're in the point where no matter what I do, it's never enough and I'm not enough, that's a problem, right? And we're always feeling bad about ourselves. Okay, in the more extreme form, we might lead to involved with addictive behaviors or compulsive behaviors or even self-injury because we're feeling so bad about ourselves. And it's almost like a way of cutting out or harming or punishing or cleansing the negative stuff out of our lives. So it's related to the hating, disowning certain parts of ourselves thing, right? So it's like, instead of facing the pain of all these different aspects of myself, which are not perfect, I'm trying to either block the feeling of them, making them go away, self-medicating them, or temporarily soothing them, but it's in a destructive manner, okay? So instead of accepting the different aspects of ourselves, it's like, we're trying to punish it. So it's related to the self-criticism, self-judgment, but it's not just inner verbal abuse, it's actually translates to the physical, okay? So really destructive, and in the end, obviously it doesn't really work. It just creates more suffering and more hating ourselves and more shame and all that stuff spiraling out, okay? All right, so another arena in which we betray ourselves is in the arena of relationships, right? Because we don't live on an island, right? We're not entities within ourselves, we're relational beings. And we bring the way we feel about ourselves into our relationships with others. And it certainly affects what we're able to give to others and what we're able to receive from others. It affects our choices of people that we choose to spend time with. And the kind of people we let in and out of our lives. Okay, so it's very important to get ourselves okay so that we can bring a better self into our relationship and make healthy relationship choices. Okay, so how do we betray ourselves in relationships with others? So one is when we don't speak up for ourselves, we don't express our feelings, we don't advocate for our needs, and we don't set boundaries with people, right? So you might sense that something's wrong, or you might sense that there's something you need to express, but like the picture, you're kind of like keeping your mouth shut and you're feeling uncomfortable. You might feel resentful, but you don't feel like maybe you have a right to say something, or you're afraid you'll upset the person, or you're afraid you don't deserve to get your needs met. And so you're betraying yourself by not expressing what's important, okay? People pleasing and codependency. It's basically saying, I'll be whoever you want and I'll help you and I'll put all my needs aside and sacrifice myself for this relationship. And it's kind of like, I'm betraying myself because I'm disappearing here. I'm trying to find myself in you. I'm not really being myself. I may not even know who I am because I'm so involved with, being okay with you. And it's kind of like I'm trying to get to enough by, being in this relationship. If only I take care of you enough, if only I meet your needs enough, then maybe finally you'll pay attention to me, or finally you'll love me for me. But I never get there because I might be with a person who's always taking, and I'm always giving, right? So I'm really not having a lot of self-respect here because I'm sacrificing it all just to keep the relationship. Because I don't really believe people would love me for me. They might only love me for what I'm able to give to them, right? So ultimate betrayal. Another one, the blaming others, right? I heard a talk once and the guy was saying, one way to betray yourself is to blame others. And it's like, oh my God, he's right. I never thought of it that way, but it's actually kind of true. Because let's think about this, right? Let's say there's a problem that I had and other people were involved or other circumstances were involved, okay? And I was spending a lot of my energy finger pointing. This happened because you did this and you did that, and this happened and this was done wrong and whatever. And so I'm spending so much energy on this blame game that I'm not even tuning into myself and what I actually need right now, right? Maybe I need more compassion. Maybe I need more rest. Maybe I need more forgiveness, but I never get to that point because, or maybe I need to learn something because I'm just pointing my fingers all the time and spending all my energy blaming because it gives me some sense of control, even though maybe it's a situation that was out of my control, right? So that's why we betray ourselves. We're not doing that YOU U-turn and looking at our role in it and learning from it and taking care of the emotions that are left over. Okay, so finally, another way we betray ourselves is being overly reliant on others to meet our needs. So because I'm waiting for everyone else, I'm kind of at their mercy. I'm giving my control away and hoping that they'll get it right for me. And people often don't get it right for me. And I'm also not developing a sense of agency and responsibility and mastery by learning how to do more things myself. And this could include practical things like things around the house, like I'm always waiting for my partner to do it for me. Or it could be even, caring for my own emotions, right? Maybe I need to develop my own coping skills and not just always rely on someone to cheer me up, right? And when I figure out ways to work with myself and get better at dealing with my pain, I feel a better sense of agency. I feel like more powerful. I feel like I could start to do this, So it's important to have a balance between self-regulation and so what they call like working with other people to help us, right? So not being over reliant. So it's like the balance is too tipped in the point of dependency. Okay, so some negative impacts, and I doubt I covered them all, but if we constantly don't put ourselves first, or we put ourselves last all the time, or we betray ourselves or neglect ourselves on a regular basis, there's a price to pay, right? We pay with our emotions. We might feel more anxious, depressed, lower self-esteem, might feel empty inside. Our relationships may not be so great. And we even might cause physical damage, right? If I'm not eating properly, resting, exercising, taking care of myself, or if I'm self-harming or involved with drugs or alcohol, I'm certainly not taking care of my physical needs. And when my body suffers, my emotions suffer. Okay. However, all right, we're going to turn it around now. You ready? So when I worked in a private practice about 5 years ago, they had a plaque up on a bookshelf and it said, "It's never too late to start the day over." And I always really liked that, because sometimes we feel like once I screw up, it's too late, it's all over. I just forget about it. Now I might as well just keep going and keep screwing up, right? But even if we've had a long-standing pattern or a long-standing problem, we could always turn it around, okay? It's not too late. And you could stop at any time and make an effort to do something different, okay? I really believe that we do the best we can based on what we know, based on the resources we have, the information we have, the coping capacities we have in our circumstances and so forth. But if we learn new information or get new motivation or have other things in the mix, we could also try harder and do better, okay? So it's not too late. And even if you messed up before, you don't have to beat yourself up about it, right? Nobody's perfect. We've all done things that are maybe not the best, but we can always start over. Okay, so today we're going to learn how to get better at caring for and loving ourselves. And you could start this at any time, including tonight. Okay, so that's the good news. All right, just need a sip of juice here. All right, here we go. So this is our self-care package. Ready? Okay, so skill 1, validate yourself. Okay. So validation, it's an important skill. It basically involves, like, if you're validating another person, it would be trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes and try to understand the world from their point of view. And that would involve, like, kind of figuring out, well, why do they act the way they act? Why do they feel the way they feel? What's the different influences that they've had in their life that lead them to be the way they are? And when you develop that understanding, you tend to be more compassionate toward the person, more empathic, less angry. And so it's a really great skill in relationships, but we could always use it in the relationship we have with ourselves. Okay. So there's different ways to validate. So first, we have to tune into ourselves, right? How do you know what to validate if you're not even paying attention, right? So recognize what you're experiencing, listen to yourself, listen to what your emotions, your thoughts, your intuition is telling you, and pay attention, right? Just the act of paying attention to a person impacts a person, right? Think about a time where someone might have paid attention to you, and just by getting that attention, you felt a little differently or a little bit better. So it's the same thing with yourself. If you start being willing to look at yourself and pay attention to yourself, it's going to start to shift things a little bit. Okay. Then you could either then start to look at yourself and be mean to yourself, but you could also try to show yourself understanding and empathy. Okay. Instead of beating yourself up or being mean to yourself or saying, "What's the matter with you? Why are you doing this?" Be a little kinder to yourself, right? Show yourself understanding. Okay, I am angry today. Yeah, I felt like someone was pushing me too hard or intruding on my boundaries or preventing me from getting to my goal. Yeah, it makes sense that I'm angry. I know it's hard. I don't like feeling this way, but yeah, that's what I'm feeling right now. Okay, that's how it is. That makes sense, right? Okay, so that's more validation. Okay, we're not judging ourselves. Okay, we're just accepting it the way it is. This is just how I feel. I don't maybe agree with the way I acted, but I understand how I got to that point and I did such and such. Okay, so acknowledge how your emotion, behavior, or reaction makes sense. And it doesn't mean you can't change it in the future, just in that moment. Maybe I get a little nasty because someone was pushing my buttons. Okay. All right. So next time I'll learn something else and I'll maybe try a different strategy. Okay. So remind yourself you're doing the best you can. And you could also learn things to get better next time. But you have to forgive yourself for not being perfect. Okay. So next, practice self acceptance. So acceptance doesn't mean agreement. It doesn't mean you like everything about yourself. You could actually accept yourself even though you don't like everything about yourself. Okay. So you could say, I understand and I accept that this is the way I am right now. I accept that I have parts of myself that I like and parts of myself that I don't like and parts of myself that I'm uncomfortable with and parts of myself I wish were better. But I accept that this is the whole package of who I am at this moment and I'm doing the best I can. Okay. And you could even do it with a gesture like the girl has in that beautiful watercolor picture. Putting your hand on your heart is a gesture of acceptance. Okay. Open, willing hands is a gesture of acceptance. Bracing and tensing against reality is not a gesture of acceptance. It's kind of like I'm defending myself against the truth and I'm not letting it in. So we need an open posture to communicate body to mind that I'm making an effort to accept. I may not perfectly accept, I might have to keep practicing it, but I accept that this is who I am at this moment. Okay. And it could change later, but maybe not right yet. Okay. Another important thing, I love this phrase that you are already enough. A lot of times in our culture, especially, we feel like we have to accomplish certain things or be a certain way in order to get to enough. But as human beings, I will tell you that we are all here doing the best we can. And just by the nature of being ourselves, we are already enough. Okay. I could be enough in my imperfection. I could be enough even though, there's other things going on. So I forgot I had this slide. So I could accept myself and know that I am enough, even if I made a mistake and I'm not perfect, even if I acted against my values. Maybe I have to get better at making choices, but I could still be enough in my imperfection. Even if you're mentally ill, if you experience trauma, if you're weak or vulnerable, if you don't have all the answers, oh my God, God forbid, right? Or others do not accept you, right? You can still accept yourself even if other people that you wish would accept you don't accept you. Okay, so all this is possible. And it may sound obvious to some degree, but it may, on an emotional level, not feel so obvious. Okay, and it's something that we have to practice. Despite everything, we're already enough, and we don't have to prove anything to get to enough. Okay, so in fact, let's take it one step further. Okay, I am blessed to be imperfect. Ugh, you kidding me? Right. No, but it's true, Um, sometimes we need these imperfections because working through them and learning through them is what's going to bring us to a higher level of our personal development. Okay. So think about in your life something difficult that you went through. And not that you wish that it would happen or you're glad that it's happened, but it's helped to shape who you are right now. And in some ways, it's helped you to be a better person. Okay. So I will tell you that if I was not bullied in elementary school, I wouldn't be here tonight talking to you. Okay. And it was a terrible experience. And I definitely was traumatized by it. I spent a few years in therapy talking about it, trying to process it. But if I did not have that experience, I wouldn't have been motivated to get into therapy and to help other people and be a therapist myself. Okay. So I learned through that experience. And, that's one example. Okay. Another example. Okay. Some people say, if I never, I'm cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. And it seems like, why would you ever want to wish to get cancer? Well, no, you didn't wish to get cancer, but because I had to go through it, I realized what was important in life. I realized who was important in my life. I realized what I could survive. I realized I had strengths I didn't know I had. I realized I had a spirituality I didn't know I had. Right. So sometimes, even though things are not going the way you planned, maybe it was meant to be that way for a certain reason because it's meant to shape who you are. Okay. So let's figure out, instead of being like, that was the worst thing that happened, it's ruining my life. How could I use my alchemy skills to translate gold? I'm sorry, make gold out of lead. How do I change it around and get the good stuff out of it to help me be a better person? Okay. So it's another way to look at your flaws besides there's something wrong with me. I'm not worthy of love. I'm a terrible person, right? You're meant to go through this, maybe to learn the thing that you most need to learn in this life. Okay. All right. So next, it's important to also dealing with our flaws and mistakes, by the way, set the intention to forgive ourselves. Okay. So why do I say set the intention? Because forgiveness is very difficult sometimes. And sometimes it's even easier to forgive others than to forgive ourselves. Um, have you ever been through experience where you keep reliving the same bad thing you did over and over again, the same mistake you made? And if only I did this differently, and if I did that differently, and what's the matter with I can, and it plays like a loop in your head and you can't let it go. And you keep beating yourself up over this thing that you did or that you believe you did. And it's sort of like a block that gets you in the way of being your best self and, moving forward in your life because it takes up a lot of mental energy. And they even say lack of forgiveness can impact your physical health. Like it's toxic to you physically, like it creates a lot of stress in your body and your immune system. So why forgive? It may feel counterintuitive. They often say that forgiveness, it's not something that's logical, because logical would be like you did something bad, you deserve punishment. And we take that way too far, right? But what if, I could just let it go and I could just learn from it and I don't have to do this ongoing punishment thing. So what does forgive mean? So here's a few things you can keep in mind. So look at the bottom here. So to forgive is stop feeling angry or resentful towards someone or yourself for an offense, flaw, or mistake, right? So instead of having all these negative feelings associated with it, we're going to try to let go of the negative feelings and instead embrace and learn from that experience. Okay. And sometimes we could make amends to the person that we hurt if we hurt somebody, and other times we cannot. But if we can't, we could also try to live our best life in a living amends, right? So I'll try to make an effort to not do that mistake again and to be a better person and live a good life. Okay. Where I work in the hospital, there's some people that I work with who, while they were mentally ill, truly did bad things. They murdered people, they assaulted people, they did all kinds of stuff that they truly regret now that they're stable on medication and they're trying to be their best self. And they know they could never undo what they did, and they feel terrible about the stuff that they did, but their living amends is to do the best they can to take their medication, work on themselves, be in treatment, stay stable, and be a good citizen. And that's the best they can do. Okay, if they constantly beat themselves up, there wouldn't be room for them to be a good person and to be a productive person in the society. Okay. So another aspect of forgive is to cancel a debt, right? So if you can't forgive yourself, it's like no matter how much I pay, it's not enough. I'm always in debt. I could never repay. I could never make up for it. So it's kind of saying, let me just cancel that debt. I know I could never make up for it, but I'll do the best I can. Okay, so it's accepting that uncomfortable feeling, that uncertainty, but for the sake of moving forward. Okay, another thing, another really important skill, excuse me, is self-compassion. Okay, there's a ton of research on self-compassion. Kristen Neff is a person who does a lot of that. Also, Chris Germer, Germer. There's a zillion studies on it. They teach this in therapy and all kinds of other places. And it's really a helpful antidote to being hard on ourselves. Okay, so instead of beating ourselves up for a mistake or for our pain or for our suffering, which makes things even worse, why not direct self-compassion toward ourselves at those times? So there's three main components that they say goes with self-compassion. So that's at the bottom of the screen. So one is mindfulness. So first we have to tune into ourselves, like I was saying earlier. I have to recognize that I'm suffering, that this is a moment of suffering, maybe tune into what that feels like in my body, right? So like in that diagram with the person in the yoga position there, it might feel like different temperatures, different sensations, tingling, tense muscles, things like that, blood pulsing, different stuff. And just tune into those sensations and picture yourself directing kindness and compassion toward them. So that's the self-kindness. You could do that also with like a gesture such as hands on your heart. And you could say kind things toward yourself in this moment of suffering, such as, I recognize what you're feeling right now. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Just be patient. I know we could do this. We can get through this, right? Whatever is calming and comforting to you. Okay. Imagine somebody in your life maybe that would say kind things to you and then say those kind things to yourself. Okay. And then the third component of self-compassion is remembering that I'm not alone with this suffering, that it actually brings me closer to other people and help connect me to other people because everybody goes through pain, right? And, I'm not the only one that's feeling pain right now. I'm not the only one who's anxious. I'm not the only one who feels guilty. I know a lot of people are going through it too. And it kind of makes me feel like I'm part of the human race, right? And remembering that takes the pressure off ourselves. When we feel like, oh my God, I'm the worst person ever. Oh my God, what did I do? Then that's a lot of pressure. That's hard, right? So those three components, really important for self-compassion. And they urge us to take what they call a self-compassion break, as it says over there. So take a step back from the situation, tune in, and direct some of this self-compassion toward yourself, okay? All right, so next, kind of related to this, right? Each thing kind of builds on each other in this self-care package. We could try to self-parent, okay? Be a good parent to yourself, all right? You may not have had this experience before, or maybe you have, but think about like if you were to give yourself all the things you wish you got from your parent, if you were to be attuned, listening, caring, comforting, all the things that would make you feel better, do that for yourself. You don't have to wait for somebody else. If you're lucky enough to have somebody in your life that helped with that, that's fantastic. But, you could also give it to yourself as well. Okay. Be your own best friend, be your own good mother, good father, whatever. And you could imagine taking care of yourself like a mother taking care of a baby, right? There's struggling parts within yourself that need your care. And you could, from your wise mind place, take care of these different suffering aspects of yourself. Okay. So kind, loving, accepting, all that stuff, as if they're children in pain. And you could love yourself while you're suffering, which may feel foreign, but it's actually true. And you can love yourself even if you're resisting, even if you're afraid of your emotions, even if you're uncomfortable with your experience, even if you're struggling with self-compassion, you could still try to comfort yourself. Okay, next, we have to address this inner critic that I was talking about before, right? So if you catch yourself beating yourself up, being mean to yourself, belittling yourself, what's the matter with you? All right, we have to take a step back and shift gears. Okay, first we got to realize what we're doing. We got to realize that just because I'm telling myself this, it doesn't mean it's the truth. Just because I'm telling myself I'm an idiot, it doesn't actually mean I'm an idiot. It's just something that my inner critic is telling me because it's trying to get me in shape, it's trying to help me. Okay, so instead, think about what would you tell a friend that was having a bad day? Would you say, "Oh, you're such an idiot," or would you say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, what a rough day." You probably would say something like that if you're a decent friend, right? So you got to try to do this for yourself. Now, some people struggle with self-affirmations because they think it's going to be like, "Wow, I'm saying all this stuff that is totally not true." Like, "I'm a great person. I'm perfect just the way I am." Wow, every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. And that just seems like a crock of shit, right? So you don't have to make it feel like it's foreign. It could still feel like realistic to you. It could be a little more neutral, like, "I'm doing the best I can. I am trying. I haven't figured it out yet. I'll be okay." If it's something more neutral or more, not super positive, like that's okay. Start with what's right for you. Okay. No one could tell you what's the right thing to tell yourself, but at least make it something comforting. Okay. So I like this meme here that I found because the ones on the left, the phrases on the left are kind of like, kind of that neutral feeling, like, all right, this is really hard, but I'm going to keep trying. All right, that's pretty realistic. You don't have to be a reckless optimist or, toxic positivity or something like that. Okay. Sometimes they talk about cheerleading yourself. So if you need to give yourself encouragement, that's also another form of self-talk. So instead of psyching yourself out of doing something, psych yourself into doing something, especially something that's going to be positive and, beneficial for you, right? And if you're not sure of what to say, another thing could be to imagine some positive things that other people have told you and then try to tell yourself the same thing, or imagine that person telling you those things. So whatever makes it more palatable for you, give it a whirl. You have nothing to lose. Okay. You could tell yourself in your head, you could write it down, you could put sticky notes, posters, put little memes on your phone, whatever works for you. But catch yourself with this negative self-talk and then try to flip it around. Okay, so next, another thing is they call self-soothing skills. Okay, and you could self-soothe with our different senses. Okay, so why do we do this? So I like to use this little diagram with the baby. So let's say we had a baby, okay, with your baby or you're babysitting or something like that. So how would you soothe the baby? You probably would using different sensory things, okay? Because babies can't have a conversation with you yet, although we like to talk to babies with baby talk, right? But it's all the sensory things that are going to make the baby feel calm. So if you had a crying baby, what would you do? You might use smell. You put on baby powder or some lotion that smells pleasant. Lavender is very calming. You might, give the baby a bottle, or a pacifier, so it's something to taste. You might put up a mobile, or just the baby looking in your eyes, in your face is comforting to the baby. You might use touch by cradling the baby, holding the baby, wrapping the baby in a soft blanket, giving the baby a soft toy, singing the baby a lullaby, or maybe playing a lullaby. They also talk about the baby Mozart stuff, the classical music, right? And of course, motion, right? You rock the baby and all that kind of stuff, push the baby in the stroller, take the baby in the car for a ride, right? So I'm not saying we're a bunch of babies, okay? But because we're still human beings and we still have all these sensory things going on, it's important to use those things as a resource, okay? Sometimes now that we're older and we have verbal skills, we get distracted with other things, right? We're all up here, but we forget that our senses could also help us feel better. So if we're having a hard day, or we're neglecting ourselves or not taking care of ourselves enough, think, well, how can I make myself feel better using all the different senses in a way that works for me? Okay. So we may not do baby powder, but maybe I use the oils, I have some of those myself that I use sometimes. Sometimes, smelly lotion, even for us. Taste could be a comfort food in moderation, of course. Vision might be like walking through a beautiful park. Like I like to go to the Arboretum sometime and take a walk, and it's nice to get a change of scenery and be in nature. Touch for sure. Getting massage, putting on lotion. I have like what I really like. It's like a weighted heating pad, and you plug it in, and it's great for winter evenings on the couch. And it makes you feel comforted because it has that little extra sand stuff inside. Holding your own hand, putting your hand on your heart and your belly, putting your hand on your cheek, things like that could feel comforting. Hearing, a lot of people tell me music is a good coping skill. So listening to music that you like could feel comforting. And of course, motion, taking a walk, doing yoga, exercising, all that stuff, right, helps to regulate our emotions and helps us to feel better. Okay. And it's a form of self-care if all these things are done in a healthy way. Okay. So next, when we get really busy, this one's really hard. Okay. So engaging in activities that are nurturing to us are really important forms of self-care. And it's easy to get caught up in life and totally put these on the back burner. And obviously not everything could be on the front burner at the same time. Like there's a lot of balls that we're trying to juggle a lot of times in our life. But sometimes we got to think, all right, if there's something that's important to me that's going to make me feel good, maybe I should really try to carve out the time for it, you know? And trust me, I've been busy a lot of times in my life. In grad school, I was working day and night all throughout the week, writing papers, doing practicums, all kinds of stuff, classes. And I still made time for things that I really wanted to do. So I really believe that, it's a matter of shifting priorities, and that when you really want to do something, you usually can find a way to do it. If you're really devoted to it, you'll carve out a little bit of time. And it doesn't have to dominate your life. You still could get certain other things done. But sometimes certain things on your to-do list really can wait a little longer. And you really can squeeze yourself onto that list, and it will make you feel better. Okay. So I'll give you a couple examples from myself. So with coronavirus, all right, we have to kind of keep socially distant, and there's certain things that we can't quite do, like certain socializing, vacations and stuff that we used to be able to do. So last summer I said, what would I really want to do that I haven't done in a while that would make me feel happy? And I said, you know what? I haven't kayaked in about 10 years. So I took out my kayak. I got a new rack for my car because it's a different car than I had when I bought the kayak. And maybe like once a week, once every other week, I would just take it out and go for a ride. And it was great. I haven't done it in a long time, but it really perked me up, given that we were quarantining for so long. And so I carved out the time to do that. And even once a week or once every other week, it made a difference. Then recently I was saying, you know what? I haven't taken French in school since I was in college, and it's been a really long time. And I always kind of want to get better at speaking another language. So around Thanksgiving time, I downloaded Rosetta Stone, and I've been trying to learn French again. And I spent a few minutes, in the evening time, maybe like, 20 minutes or something like that, doing a couple of these little lessons. But I like it. It's kind of fun. I carved out this little bit of extra time to do something that is like a guilty pleasure for me, and I enjoy it, So think about something like that for yourself and just make that little bit of extra time, and you really might find it makes a difference. Okay. So here's another one. And this could be a challenge. So I have another presentation that I do about giving and receiving. And sometimes, we find that it's easier to give than to receive, and sometimes we have a lot of hangups about letting in the good. And it goes back to this feeling like, I'm not sure if I deserve it, or if I take too much, people might be mad at me, or things like that. But you know what, if we don't accept the good, or if we downplay the good in our life, or we cling too much to the negative, we're going to keep grasping for the good, but we're never going to appreciate it. And we're never going to be satisfied. right? Like if someone, has a good conversation with me or, pays attention to me or does something nice for me and I downplay it, it's going to feel like it never even happened. And then I'm going to be looking somewhere else for something good to happen, right? So if I appreciate what I actually have and the good that's coming to me and the good people in my life and the pleasant things that happen throughout my day, not that I'm making stuff up, but just that I'm shifting my focus on different things, then it really could make a difference in the way I perceive myself and the way I perceive my life, right? It's also about recognizing the good that I do, so giving yourself credit for the efforts that you make, even if they're small. Like sometimes, you might have a big to-do list and they'll say there's 10 items on the list and you only did 5 today and you're really hoping to do 10. So instead of being like, oh no, I didn't finish the list, I should have did more. Then you know what? All right, at least I got 5 things done today. That was pretty good. I put the effort in and, I did the best I could, right? And I got something done. So, right, so give yourself credit for the little that you did and recognize the little bits of progress that you make in the things you want to accomplish. Okay, so next, okay, so working on self-trust. So when you trust somebody, right, you're trusting that they're going to put your best interest at heart and that they're going to act that way consistently, right? So if you think about people in your life that you trust, they usually fit that definition, okay? So when we work on trusting ourselves, we have to do something similar and act in our own best interest on a consistent basis. So that's making choices and decisions that are in line with our values, that serve our needs, that, make us, feel proud of what the choices we're making. It's about keeping promises and commitments to ourselves, right? So let's say I said, you know what, one thing that's going to be good self-care for me is to exercise more because I'm pretty much a couch potato and I sit at my desk and then I sit on the couch and I sit at my desk and then the couch and I go to bed. So I want to take a half an hour walk every day. So if I make sure indoors or outdoors, I'm taking that half an hour walk every day, I'm keeping a commitment to myself. I'm not just saying, I'm a little tired, it's a little cold out, forget it. I'm keeping the commitment to myself. And then I feel good about myself, like I could trust myself to act in my best interest, to follow through on something that's important. Okay. Also, I skipped the one on the top, but it's very important. Practice recognizing your own value, right? Instead of downplaying it, recognize I have value as a human being. And I'm willing to keep that in mind as I'm interacting with people and making decisions in my life. And of course, having the courage to do what's needed. Because sometimes, acting in our best interest, involves disappointing other people or it involves making a difficult decision. It might involve cutting certain toxic people out of your life and breaking off a relationship or leaving a job that is just not right for you. And it's a bold decision and it might be a life-changing decision, but you're never going to be okay until you do this thing. So that takes courage, so you got to give yourself credit for that and, to maybe get some support as you do what's in your best interest. Okay. So, but doing all these things on a regular basis definitely builds self-trust. So you'll know that I consistently will look out for myself. Okay. So this looks familiar, right? Because way back in the beginning of the presentation, I brought this up as different ways we betray ourselves, right? So if we're trying to take care of ourselves, we have to do all these things, right? We have to tune into ourselves with mindfulness, pay attention to our intuition and act from it. If I feel really uncomfortable around someone, maybe I'm going to stop spending time with that person, right? Listen to my emotions, realize that they're giving me messages, honoring my needs and making decisions to help me meet them in a healthy way. Recognizing what my values are and living from my values. All these things super important. Okay, so here's a skill from dialectical behavior therapy that's also very related to taking care of ourselves. Okay, so the FAST skill is about building self-respect. Okay, so how do we build self-respect? First of all, we have to be fair to ourselves and to others, right? I have to recognize where I'm responsible for things, not unfairly blame myself or unfairly blame other people. I got to look at the whole picture, be clear about what's going on, not beat myself up too much, right? That's being fair. No apologies basically means no overly apologetic behavior. right? You should definitely apologize if you did something wrong, and it's important to do that. But sometimes we say, I'm sorry for every little thing. And if you keep saying, I'm sorry, you're just going to feel like you're this small. Gee, I'm sorry I had to go to the bathroom. Oh, I'm sorry for interrupting. Oh, I'm sorry for taking up space. Oh, I'm sorry because I ate too much. I'm sorry that I ate, right? It makes you feel like I can't even take up space. Okay, so no overly apologetic behavior. Live out loud, apologize when necessary, but don't apologize when not necessary. There's other things we could say instead, such as excuse me instead of I'm sorry, right? Okay, sticking to our values, which I kind of covered before, and being truthful. It's hard to respect yourself if you're lying, right? And to, make sure, even if it's hard, that you're being honest in a kind way. And if you're feeling a certain thing, you're telling exactly the level of emotion you're feeling. You're not exaggerating. You're not saying, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. And look what you did. Blah, blah, blah. Right. All right. I was a little upset. Right. You don't have to exaggerate just to get attention or just to get a reaction from somebody. Just say what it is. Okay. And accept it at that level. Okay. So we're getting close to the end now. So also remembering that we're never going to be perfect, and that's okay. And even if we have flaws, we're still worthy of love from others, and we're still worthy of selecting positive people to be in our life. Sometimes we don't feel like we deserve to have good people, like, only who would ever really love me if they found out who I really am, that kind of thing. But, we're still worthy of love. We're still worthy of a relationship. And it's important to have positive relationships in our life. And it's important for us to reach out and get support when we need it. So always keep that in mind. Okay. All right. So that pretty much gets us to the end. So if you hung out all this time, I really appreciate your listening. And I'd be glad to answer any questions if people have questions. So feel free to go in the chat, or Sarah could maybe put you on, so we could hear you if you want to talk. So.
Yeah, if you'd like to ask a question, of course, you are more than welcome to do it in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you. Entirely up to you, whatever you guys would like. Okay, Maura, so this was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I can't see the chat.
I don't know if you guys have any opinions on what you'd like to have another program on. I'd love to hear what you guys would like. Maybe if you guys had any ideas of what you'd like to hear about next, please let me know, because we'd be more than happy.
Someone raised their hand, Lisa.
Can you give some tips on comparing ourselves to others?
Comparisons get us in trouble a lot of time. We have to be careful about that, because a lot of times, it just brings us down because we just look at how much better other people seem compared to us. But everybody's in their own situation, and social media really, really amplifies this, because everyone presents the self they want others to see, and they don't present the stuff they don't want others to see. So sometimes we get a false idea about how other people are doing, and we're like, geez, wow, this person looks so much better off than I am. But it's kind of like that grass is always greener thing. And in 12-step programs, they say, don't compare your insides to other people's outsides. And I think it's like a great thing to remember that, just because other people look good, it doesn't mean, they're always feeling good on the inside, or they're not suffering in some kind of way that you don't even know about. So, just be mindful of when you're comparing, and try to pull back from that, or let that go, or ask yourself, what is this all about? Why am I, getting into this mode of comparison,
Let's see. Someone said that we want to exercise, but then they feel tired and then they don't do it. Is it self-care to allow myself rest, but then they feel bad for not honoring their need to exercise? So I think there's a bit of conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag. The one hand, you want to do the best you can and forgive your imperfections and not following through with certain things. Because if you beat yourself up, you're just going to be even less in the mood to do it. But at the same time, we could also try to make efforts to keep our commitments to ourselves to do things such as exercise. I struggle with that a bit myself, so I can't say I'm really good at overcoming the exercise one. But, just keep trying, start the day over, do the best you can today, and, see how it goes. Sometimes they say an exercise buddy helps, or people have different things that motivate them, but that's why we're a pretty overweight country, because it's very hard to motivate ourselves sometimes.
Samara said, thank you. She'll use that 12-step quote about comparisons as
Okay, cool.
Jared says there's a lot of info on mindfulness. How effective do you find that versus old school mentality of solving via meds?
So medication versus mindfulness. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I mean, you could take medication and also practice mindfulness. If you practice mindfulness on a regular basis, it does have a lot of positive effects on your brain and your body. It's one of the most healthy things you could do for your brain. It develops your prefrontal cortex, which is like the thinking rational part of your brain, like the higher level part of your brain. It kind of helps to develop the connections between your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala, which is the emotional part of your brain. So you have more top-down control of your emotions. It helps to calm a lot of your physiology, which is good. So you could reshape your brain with mindfulness. And if you need medication, because that helps you, take medication. It really doesn't have to be one or the other, but I definitely recommend it. I do practice mindfulness. I teach mindfulness. Both are fine. Anybody else? All right, so while you're thinking, if you don't have a question, I just want to let you guys know, if you're interested, it's totally free. I have a YouTube page with 151 videos of a variety of topics, and it's freely available to the public. There's the main things I have are DBT skills for dialectical behavior therapy, which is good if you're struggling with intense emotions and managing stress and so forth. Radically open DBT skills, which is good if you find yourself being a little too closed, a little too rigid, a little too perfectionistic. Attachment styles, which has to do with the way you connect with people in different ways. And I have a variety of other psychology topics as well. My next series is probably going to be for trauma. There's a type of treatment called sensory motor psychotherapy. And there's a manual with like 35 chapters with some really good stuff. And I'm probably going to translate them into videos at some point in the future. So that's also something you can look out for. But, feel free to check it out if you're interested. The link is over here, which I could put in the chat if you want. Otherwise, if you type in Jennifer May DBT, those keywords will probably take you to my page and you could explore if you're interested. Was there any other questions or?
Let's see, when in process of doing all these recommendations while in process of a divorce, how do you get over the feeling of guilt that you're faking, that you're doing okay?
Wait, say it one more time. Just.
I think someone is in the process of getting a divorce, and I think that there's a feeling of guilt that they're faking being okay.
Mm-hmm. Faking being okay, like for other people, that you're trying to
yeah
say, hey, I'm dealing with this, I'm okay, well, think of it this way. In certain circumstances, that's appropriate. Like you may not want to go to work and be a sobbing mess. You may need to pull it together for certain people. And there also might be people where you could let your hair down and you could confide in them about how you're really doing. But if you feel like you can't shut it off and you're always trying to be okay and you don't have anyone you could just express yourself to, like that might be a stressor, like when you're going through something difficult and life-changing, it's important maybe to have some people to connect to about that, where you could just be honest. So I would just say, don't beat yourself up if it's an appropriate circumstance where being okay is, sort of what you need to do. They call it the going on with life self. It's actually kind of adaptive if we were able to pull it together sometimes. So that's acceptable, but, in other ways, try to find an area where you're able to, to talk as well.
Okay, someone else wanted to know about self-care in relation to alcoholism.
If you're an active alcoholic or if you're in recovery.
They don't specify, I don't know. Um, just says alcoholism.
Um, if you're in active addiction, um, you got to think, well, is this working? Well, sometimes, just to put it this way, in a broader way, addiction is like initially intended as a way to care for ourselves, right? Maybe I'm suffering. Maybe I've been through a difficult, time in my life and I'm experiencing a lot of stress and I couldn't figure out any other way to cope with it. And so I ended up gravitating to alcohol because when I had a few drinks, I started to feel better. So I could understand, that it makes sense in that circumstance that this became my coping skill. But sometimes when it gets out of hand after a while, then that becomes the problem in itself. And sometimes people just see, the surface of it. They say, oh, this person has a drinking problem. But, the original intent of it was to self-care. However, there might be other more effective ways, non-addictive ways to engage in self-care, such as the ones I talked about today, although it's not an exhaustive list. So the idea of wanting to take care of yourself makes sense. You just might have to do it differently. Perhaps, starting with a 12-step program might help, or some other form of recovery treatment, if you want to start yourself on that path, because doing these self-care things while you're in active addiction is never going to be super effective because the addiction is going to keep taking over. So I hope that answers it kind of.
We have two other questions. One is,
Sure.
can you discuss forgiveness again? Sometimes
Mhm.
it's very, very difficult.
Yes, it is difficult. You're absolutely right. Um, Sometimes they say, it could help to, let's say, make a list of the things that you find you're struggling to forgive, whether in yourself or other people. And then start with the one that's the easiest to forgive and practice forgiving with that. And then start to progress down your list. Sometimes we have a ton of things that we're struggling with, and sometimes it's like one big thing. But like I was saying before, the first step might be to set the intention to forgive, to, say, what, I'm going to make an effort to forgive today, even if I'm not completely successful. It's also an ongoing process. It's not like, wow, I forgave today and now it's all done, right? I might forgive for a little while and then something happens and triggers me all over again. And now I'm like, oh man, I can't stand this, whatever, and I kind of get all riled up all over again. So I have to recognize I've shifted back to non-forgiveness and turn my mind back to forgiveness. There actually is a good skill for that, in Radically Open DBT, which is kind of on the screen here. I think it's the last one. Flexible Mind Has Heart, Learning to Forgive. It's actually a really good skill. So if you want to go to my page and check that out, I really go into depth with that. So that might give you more than I could tell you in like 2 minutes. So you check that out if you want to.
She said, thank you. So another question is, do you have any thoughts specifically on pandemic stress and self-acceptance and feelings of not maybe doing as good of a job as you're used to?
You know what? We've all been struggling with the pandemic, and it's hitting us all in different ways. And it's really one of those things, like I talked about with the self-compassion, that we're all kind of in together, as I kept saying. So we have to understand, like, we're all doing the best we can under the circumstances, and we're not living the life we thought we were going to be living. You know, so I would go back to this thing of like, just do your best every day. And if you fall a little short, just try to forgive yourself and just start it over again tomorrow. Be as skillful as you can, but it's not going to be perfect, you know.
Okay, we have another question.
Mhm.
So how do I get out of loathing myself when I make a mistake? I always go to that dark place where I feel
Mhm.
the world would be better if I didn't
Would be better if I didn't.
exist.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really painful place, and sometimes, we get to that extreme, and a lot of times we get into the habit of self-loathing, and it came maybe from a long time ago. It's just a pattern that we keep practicing. So it takes time to develop a new habit of, forgiving ourselves, being patient with ourselves, accepting ourselves, recognizing we're doing the best we can. But we have to recognize, be mindful of when we're doing this and be willing to try something different. We have to like literally kind of carve out new pathways in our brain, to do something else. And it takes time. So, it's not an easy answer. And I don't fully know your circumstance, but it's something you just have to start with step by step and be patient with yourself, because it might take a little while, or a long while. But if you feel like it's worth the effort, then keep trying.
There's another question that says there are
Mhm.
studies about loneliness being more dangerous than smoking.
Mm.
Work on loneliness as introverts.
I just did the thing about loneliness a few months ago through this
Wow.
actually. And I have 2 videos on it on my web page, I mean, my YouTube page as well. Loneliness is dangerous to some degree because we are social creatures and we're meant to be in relationships. We're meant to be connected to others. It's actually better for our health when we're connected to others. And a lot of people are talking about being lonely, especially now, with COVID-19. And that was why I wanted to do that presentation in part. But it's really a societal epidemic. A lot of people are lonely just because the way things are going in our Western world. So one way around it is to connect with yourself using some of the techniques from today. And then when you're in a better place with yourself, you'll also be in a better place to have a more fulfilling connection with other people. And even if you only connect with a few quality relationships, be enough. You don't need, a million friends. You'd only need a couple of people that are meaningful to you that you could feel close to. And, that's really protective, in terms of even lifespan, by the way.
All right. I think that was
Okay.
the last question. She said thank you.
Oh, sure.
So does anyone else have any other questions before we call it a night? Anybody?
One more.
Thanks a lot. Have a good night. You too.
Okay.
Um,
Thanks everybody for coming. I enjoyed our time together. I hope we could do this again maybe sometime, but thanks for coming and listening.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And check out Jennifer's YouTube channel and also mcpl .tv. So there's a question, when will your next talk take place?
That's up to the library. Actually, I have one. If you want to see me in person, if you live in the area, I'm doing this same kind of talk next Thursday at Connecticut Library at 7:00 at the library. So if you or anyone you know is in the area and want to swing by, we'll have more of an interactive thing there.
We might have a space issue. So just, I think they'll allow people to come and see you, Jen. So, but just for the patrons, I would call Connecticut first to just make sure that you'll be allowed in.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, just because of COVID and everything, I just know that
Right.
probably space issues. So definitely just give a call before you go down to see the program at Connecticut. And we'll definitely have Jennifer back to give another great lecture.
Or if any of you guys, have an organization you're affiliated with and you want me to talk there, I'd be glad to, to do something for you guys. I'd really like to reach out to the community and offer stuff where I can. So just, let me know.
Okay. Well, everyone have a good night. And like we were saying, check out Jen's YouTube page. And also this will be up on mcpl.tv. All right. So everyone have a good night. Thank you for coming.
Okay. Bye guys. Thank you.